This is Oromo Voice Radio English program. Oromo Voice Radio is broadcasting to Oromia at 16-meter band or 17,850 kilohertz or on oromovoice.org website. OVR broadcasts Oromia Insight program every Monday for 15 minutes at 7:15 p.m. Oromia local time. Welcome to Oromia Insight program.
Oromia is a country in East Africa well known as the Horn of Africa. It's 600,000 square kilometers, making it larger than France, Italy, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Oromia is populated by over 40 million people. It's the origin of human race and the Gada system. Oromia is the birthplace of coffee and home to world-class athletes. Also is a nation with multi-faith society, Christianity, Islam, and Waqf. Oromia is the third largest single nation in Africa and the single largest nation in East Africa. It has been occupied by Ethiopia for over 130 years and is struggling for self-determination. Oromia has unaccounted number of Oromo refugees living in other countries.
Welcome to Oromia Insight. My name is Ali Galeto. This is part 2 interview with Dr. Awal Alo, Fellow in Human Rights at the London School of Economics and Political Science, and Mr. Tsaggai Ararsa from Melbourne Law School.
You also said that in its content it violates the human rights of Oromo farmers to land, to a means of livelihood, to adequate living standards, and so on. And so socio-economic rights of the farmers are affected, and the collective rights of Oromo people, and the autonomy and power authority of the Oromia government is violated. Plus, in addition to that, in the process of implementation, and when they tried to implement it, a number of people protested and a number of students are being killed. Massively, people were imprisoned. Some of them are not released up until today, and so many people were gunned down and wounded. So this, in its process, in its content, and in its content, it violates the Constitution. We also said the master plan ignores state duty to ensure good governance. Of course, good governance is tied to decentralization, and that is violated, and the principle of transparency and consultation and accountability, all these principles are not taken into account. Therefore, the master plan is doomed in terms of law and legality from the very start. So that was the argument we made, and that wasn't heard, and the government went on to, for a while it went down because the people protested, but then it looks like the whole protest is ignored, and as Awal said earlier on, the Oromo protest is kind of unintelligible to the government. So the official now, Abai Sahaye, who is an advisor to the Prime Minister, who doesn't have any authority to speak about these matters at all, expresses this anger against the government of Oromia and the local government of the spatial zone, as if the popular protest doesn't mean anything.
I think one of the interesting things about Abai Sahaye's claim and his contempt for the Oromo people is the extent to which it exposes the relationship between the TPLF and the Oromo People's Democratic Organization, so-called the OPDO. Well, the OPDO is presented as an equal partner, right? And it contributes by large the highest number of seats in the parliament, which enables the government, at least theoretically speaking, to claim legitimacy to run the government. An official that we know plays a very significant role politically, but doesn't really have a formal institutional role in government. For him to come out and say that it is local officials who have done this and that, it is the Oromia regional government that is responsible for the protest, just goes to expose this shabby relationship that we are told is the relationship of equality and freedom. That is absolutely not the case. So one of the things that it shows, apart from the contempt and disregard that they have for the Oromo people, is precisely that Oromo People Democratic Organization is not an organization that has an existence of its own. It's a dependent organization that can do nothing in terms of protecting and preserving in the interests of the Oromo. And at the same time, I think it is worth noting that the relationship of inequality and domination has reached such a point that even those people who have obeyed every demand of the TPLF are now saying enough is enough. There is always a limit to which you can accept this kind of unacceptable imposition and subjugation. And I think that is one important dimension or implication of what I was doing.
Dr. Awal, you wrote an article, The Politics in Ethiopian Political Trials, on 30 November 2012. The Ethiopian regime is using the legal system to eliminate dissent, voice, and drag protesters to the court under terrorism charge. Far from guaranteeing equality and justice, the court serve as an instrument in the government hand to legitimize prosecution of political adversary while justifying its practice to the West. The side of the courtroom has been used to intimidate, harass, silence, exile, and eliminate political views perceived to be a threat to the authority of the day. What is the Oromo question and why the government of the regime is actually doing this?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, I still stand by that claim that I made. And the courtroom plays a very crucial role in terms of preserving and consolidating the existing structure of power in Ethiopia. This is precisely because it's a government that needs to preserve itself by an appeal to something else, rather than the legitimacy that it gets from the public. Right? It has to mobilize the legal process and court proceedings in order to provide this aura of legality and aura of legitimacy, so that people actually, give it the benefit of the doubt that it is not using physical violence as it happens in the past, but it is at least providing people the opportunity to have their days in the court. This is basically the language that the former Prime Minister often uses. I remember once when he was asked about the counter-terrorism law in the parliament, and he was asked how the government justifies using the counter-terrorism legislation against opposition groups, against journalists and everyone, basically to intimidate and force people to capitulation. And his answer was that, we were kind enough to give these people a day in court. The Americans were using missiles to eliminate people, their own citizens. Right? So the moral of this story is that the courtroom is seen as a powerful instrument to justify a politics of elimination, a politics of repression, because when you do these things through courts, it's not seen or it's not perceived as a repressive politics. Right? It's legalistic politics. So one of the reasons why the Ethiopian government turns to the legal proceeding and the courts is precisely to conceal and hide the repressive character of its politics. And courts has been serving that purpose not just now since 2005 election or since the anti-terrorism legislation was passed, but from day one really. If we look at the ways in which even the Red Terror trial, which is a trial that was supported by anyone, a trial meant to be against some of the worst perpetrators of violence in that country, even that trial was used in such a strategic way in order to construct and produce legitimacy for the regime, rather than using it as an occasion in which the Ethiopian state can affirm its norms, can call those who has perpetrated those atrocities into account and send a message that this will never happen again. So I think the current government has learned a politically important lesson from history of authoritarian governments who have deployed their courtrooms precisely because of this very productive and generative potential of the courtroom.
What will happen the next 6 months based on what is actually happening now? Okay.
Well, what will happen? Again, this is a very difficult question. As I said, these issues are beyond the technical determination of who is at fault and what exactly is the problem and who therefore should be guilty and who should be innocent, etc. This is, as Awal has already touched upon, a result of a lot of unacknowledged problems of the different nations and nationalities and peoples in Ethiopia, but in general, but also of Oromos in Ethiopia. They try to solve, or at least give an appearance of solving them, through recognition of the principle of self-determination, restructuring of the state as a federal system, as a federation, and so on and so forth. But all that was used as a way of legitimizing and as a way of co-opting local elite leaders into the system and perpetuate the supremacy of the TPLF within the EPRDF coalition of the government. That's why they suppress all sorts of dissent, all sorts of voices that speak for all sorts of alternative voices that speak for the different groups in the country. So in the end, the state hasn't been transformed. The democratic system hasn't been truly implemented. Self-determination has been reduced only to a theoretical legal text. Now, this year is a year of election. What will happen? There are a number of reports that are coming out in recent times that this is going to be a failed state. This is a failed state, in fact, in one report, and there is a lot of tension going on from all corners. There are journalists imprisoned, and people are watching it very carefully. Political parties rendered dysfunctional by the National Electoral Board recently, and there is a lot of pressure on the existing opposition political parties on the basis of the electoral laws and so on and so forth, and party registration laws. As we know, from 2009 on, the anti-terrorism law has been a very important tool of suppression of all forms of political activity. The charity law, the civil society legislation, it stifles all sorts of organization or association. So given all this, resentment against all this, this coming year and looking at what is going to emerge in relation to the master plan in the coming weeks, it is very, very difficult to say that this is going to be a very peaceful election. This is going to be a time of stability in the country. So, in my opinion, there are a number of things to do by the government. Very many small practical things and some theoretical legislative things. The first is, I think, one of the things they have to do is to make Abai Sahaye, for example, recant this statement, apologize to the government of Oromia, to the government of the local government in the spatial zone, to the residents of even the broader Addis Ababa city, and explain the state of affairs at the moment to the Ethiopian public. Otherwise, calm cannot come to that country. The second thing they have to do is, I think, to restore total authority to the local government and the regional government, and to stop patronizing the governments of these 36 towns and 17 districts in the spatial zone. And I think he has to recant these threats issued to the OPDO officials, in which he says, if you stand on our way, we are going to crush you. I think thirdly, they also need to make the advisor of the advisor of the Prime Minister, accountable both personally and in the name of the office of the Prime Minister. They can do this in Parliament through questioning him personally, and they can do this by asking the Prime Minister himself to remove him from his position. Fourthly, they can, I think this is very important, they must repeal the master plan. It has been, contested, it has been protested against resolutely across the entire Oromia region, and a huge demonstration has been made in the city by a coalition of political groups, political parties, and the whole population, the whole nation is against it. And what more can democracy demand? What more can you do about people's voice when they are openly protesting against your decision and your policy? So I think they have to repeal the master plan, stop the implementation, restore the farmers that are already displaced, that have been removed from the land, and pay them adequate compensation, and pay them damages, compensation for damages caused by destruction of life and livelihood wages. And fifthly, I think they have to implement the constitutional right of the Oromia government to the special interest in the city. They have to start negotiating ways of relocating the capital city elsewhere. And I think they also have to quickly release the prisoners that went detention centers immediately on the aftermath of trying to implement the master plan. I think if they do this, they can at least bring things back to normal so that other things can start, other political discussions can start afterwards.
Thank you, Dr. Awal Alo, a fellow in human rights at the London School of Economics and Political Science, Mr. Sagai Ararsa from Melbourne Law School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.